Hey everybody, welcome to the next installment of chord pairs. So today's chord pair is A7 to D7, these two chords. There you have it, those two chords. There's going to be a whole workup on those with a different strum pattern compared to the previous video, which is going to be added on at the end of this video, the A major 7 chord to the D7 chord. So today we're just doing A7 and D7. Okay, these are both known as dominant 7th chords. So the dominant 7th chord is built off the 5th scale degree. That's for another lesson. So we're going to try to work out these two chords to create a smooth transition from one to the next, which is one of the hardest things to do when you learn how to play guitar. That's one of the hard elements to master, is getting smooth chord changes. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to bring you into the actual score, and I'm going to share it if I can get back to my screen here and share it. All right, here he comes. All right, there we go. And we should share the sound as well. Okay. So there you have it. So that is your chord pair. So A7, we'll go through the chords first, and then we'll talk about what's in the score. So the first chord you get is going to be your A7 chord, and there it is. So fingering wise, I have the index finger and the middle finger playing that chord. So you have an option in terms of fingerings. You can put your middle finger here on your 4th string, 2nd fret, and the ring finger here on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. That's an option you have. And of course, you can see on top, we have the colored circle, which is the root of the chord. That's the A right there. And then the spelling of the chord is A, C sharp, E, and G. That's the spelling of your A7 chord. So later on, if you know what the letters are in your chords, you can actually go in and play these chords elsewhere. But for now, we're keeping everything within the first couple of frets, including open strings. And that creates an easier chord pairing to go through just on the onset. And D7 coming up. So now you can see the middle finger, ring finger playing in the 2nd fret area. So you can apply that fingering to the A7 chord, those two fingers, not necessarily here, because in this location, of course, you have your D7 chord. Colored circle gives you the root of the chord, which is D, and the spelling of the chord is D, F sharp, A, and C. That's how you spell your D7 chord, okay? So that's the idea between those two chords. We want to create a fingering that moves smoothly from one to the next. And I'm going to make the score a little bit bigger for you so you can see what's happening. We can talk about what's in the score. Excuse me. So we have our standard tuning. We have our tempo at 60 beats per minute. We have a measure of count, which is going to be a 4 count to lead you into the first 4 measures of playback. So when you hear the music playback later on, you're going to hear the click track first. Okay. So now the strum pattern, 2 quarter notes and then 2 sets of 1/8 notes. All right. So that entails down and down for the first 2 beats. You're down strumming the A7, and then you're going to do a down strum on the first 1/8 note, up strum on the second 1/8 note, and that repeats on beat 4. And that pattern repeats in the remaining measures. Still playing with the A7 and D7 chord, but here we actually gave it a little bit more time as compared to other charts from previous postings. 2 bars of A7 and 2 bars of D7. As you can see, those 2 bars and 2 bars repeat, so you can do those 4 measures through twice, and you'll hear that on the playback. And we get a change still with quarter notes, but the 1/8 note comes in on beat 2, the 1/8 note set. Beat 3 is a quarter note, beat 4, 1/8 notes, and that continues on for the remainder of this particular chord chart. Okay. In terms of counting, chord notes are counted as 1, 2, 1/8 notes, 3 and 4, and 1, 2, 3 and 4, and 1, 2, 3 and 4, and 1, 2, 3 and 4, and so of course with 1/8 notes you're going to have an alternation in the right hand, down strum going first, up strum after that. Okay, so wherever you get the 1/8 notes, you're going to be alternating in that fashion, down and up. You can see every single grouping of 1/8 notes has the same right hand part wherever you go in the score. So beat 2 here, for the last 4 bars that get repeated, we have the 1/8 notes on beat 2 and 4. Of course, the previous examples, we had 1/8 notes on beats 3 and 4. So I just changed it up a little bit, of course. Down, down, up, down, down, up, which in counting translates to 1, 2 and 3, 4 and that continues all the way to the end. All right. So, and we have our fretboard diagram on the bottom here, which if I go back up to the top here, highlight the chord, you can see here in the fretboard diagram where the letters are, and that translates into the score as well as what's in the tablature. Okay. Open A string, 2nd fret D string for E, open 3rd string G, 2nd fret C sharp on the B string, and open E string. So if you read from the bottom up in the tablature as well as the notes, that's how you get your stack. A, E, G, C sharp, E on top, open A, 2nd fret D string for E, open 3rd string G, 2nd fret B string, C sharp, and E, open 1st string. Okay, so there you have the score details, you know, talking about the strum pattern, how often you play through the chords. Excuse me. On D7, you can see on the bottom, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Let's go back to here. There we go. Okay, so now in the fretboard diagram, I just highlighted it. You can see the open D, you got the A, 2nd fret on the 3rd string, you got a C, 1st fret on the B string, and F sharp, 2nd fret on the 1st string, and that's how it's laid out here. Open D string, 2nd fret 3rd string, 1st fret 2nd string, 2nd fret 1st string, or D, A, C, F sharp. So there it is, D, A, C, F sharp. Okay, so that's the deal with that. So without further ado, I'm going to slide this puppy down here, and I'm going to go back to 100% just to make it a little smaller, because I want to make sure that the highlighted measures are reflected in the fretboard diagram on the bottom. That should work out pretty good. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to play back the chord chart. So it's at the beginning, and here it comes. Okay, there you go. Excuse me. So that's the chord chart for you. And now if I get out of the screen share. Okay, so now being out of the score, we could talk about left hand excuse me, operation first. So we have the fingering in the chart is set up this way, with index finger playing the D string 2nd fret and the middle finger playing the B string 2nd fret. And then the right hand plays through 5 strings, strings 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And that is your A7 chord, fingered that way in the diagram that's supplied in the chart. But I like to use middle finger, ring finger, because that easily moves to the D7 chord fingering, which is also middle finger and ring finger. Middle finger on 3rd string 2nd fret, and then you have the ring finger on the 1st string 2nd fret. 1st finger plays the 1st fret on the 2nd string. So it's that triangle shape that was used in the A major 7 D7 chord pairing in a previous video, which I'll include here at the end. So that is the fingering for A7 that I like to use. Again, that kind of creates a nice smooth transition, which is the idea of these chord pair videos. We want to get smoother at changing chords. Okay, so to create a fingering that sort of facilitates that is the key element. Okay, so middle finger, ring finger, A7, that transfers over to the D7 chord, and then of course the 1st finger is put onto the 2nd string 1st fret. So the idea with the left hand, we want to move all the fingers in one piece. Okay, with guitar playing, all of the action happens in the air in between chords. So you want to set up your chord fingering in the air before you place it down on the strings. That's really one of the goals. And to get to that point, keep everything super slow. When you do your left hand only, which is a great way to start playing through chords, is just left hand nice and light on the strings in terms of placement. We're not pressing in, we're not fretting the notes. We're just getting the fingers in the right location. Okay? So if I go to play that chord, you can hear muted strings because I'm just merely placing the fingers on top of the strings. I'm not pushing down to get tones yet. I don't want to push down right away. I want to get left hand movement squared away. I know exactly where the fingers are going, and you just hang out with that for a little bit till you get really comfortable and all the fingers move as a group, as a unit. We don't want to add fingers in one at a time when we switch chords back and forth. There's not enough time to do that. So we want to get everybody going and moving in the same direction all at the same time. So there you have it. So you do this through a few times back and forth. A few times back and forth is really beneficial, and done super, super slow. Don't play these things fast. Don't move in a fast fashion, because what happens is tension builds up in your hand because you're trying to keep up with the movement of your hand physically, and because mentally we think, okay, we got this, no problem. And then you go to move the fingers and you feel tension building up because you feel pressure or some kind of concept along those lines. We don't want to feel tension. We want to feel relaxed and comfortable. So that comes from doing everything slow. Okay. And as time wears on with this, the idea is to get it in one sitting. You'll get that particular movement. That particular movement will happen in one sitting if you take your time. That's really the thing. Okay. So once that's cool, then you can start working through the chord chart. You can listen to the chord chart first, which I recommend. Get a hear through it. See if the tempo is agreeable. You can use your metronome. I have a Snark metronome for my metronome. If you have an app for your metronomes, feel free to use that. Whatever gets the job done, you can go with that. You can go to YouTube and you can type in, metronome 40 BPM, and it'll give you a metronome, and you can play along with that too. Or just simply buy a metronome. You have one on hand. It's always there, keeping the batteries in good shape. Or an app, whatever you want to use. The point is you want to use a metronome, and when you're doing this. So if 60 feels too fast for this chord chart, feel free to bring it down to lower numbers like 50 or 40 and so on. And then eventually time wears on, you'll become more at home with the movement, and then you'll feel yourself playing at faster tempos. Okay. The thing I did there is I played the first 4 bars of the chart. The key to some of the smoothness also is where you lift from chord to chord, and typically it happens on beat 4. So if it's the first measure and then the second measure has a different chord in it, you want to switch on the and of 4 for the 8th notes, okay? And that again entails moving through the air, right? So when you get to the end of 4, if there's 8th notes on beat 4, you want to use the 4 and the and moment of that count on those last 2 8th notes to lift your hand off. So when you do the up strum, you're going to hear open strings, and then the next down strum will be the new chord, and you'll hear the chord audibly. All those tones will come out. So if you're going to focus on lifting your hand up, do it on the end of 4. And if you get open strings in the up strum, that's what you want anyway. So if you play at fast tempos, you're not going to really perceive hearing that. Or the other strum pattern, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and, or even faster. So the faster you go, the perception is that it sounds smooth, even though I'm lifting off the tones and playing open strings on an up strum. You're not really going to hear those. So when it's played super fast, it's really barely noticeable. Okay, so that's a tip for you right there in terms of achieving even more smoothness rather than just focusing on the left hand. The right hand, same thing. If you're working on your strum patterns, you might want to mute your strings. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and down, 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 up, down, up. Okay? So say if you play through the chart, you had a problem with that particular chart, go back to isolating your left hand to get the movements together, and then mute your strings with your left hand, work on your right hand for the strum patterns, right? So whether it's quarter notes and then 2 sets of eighth notes, like in the first 4 measures, or the other strum pattern, which is the quarter note, 2 eighth notes, quarter note, 2 eighth notes, which results in 1, 2, and 3, 4, and whatever the strum pattern that you're having a problem with, go in, mute your strings, so you don't hear any tones. Very lightly place your left hand on top of your strings, or you can tie a sock around your strings, whatever you want to do to mute them, and then focus on the right hand, okay? It's a really good thing to do, and use your metronome, of course. Start at 60 beats per minute, and maybe you want to advance it up to a faster tempo in incremental stages, like in 5s or 10s numerically. Whatever you need to do that way, and then of course shut your metronome off because you want to recreate that rhythmic feel without sounding too robotic. But the metronome keeps you in check, okay? So it's good to use it for a while and then shut it down and be able to feel that tempo and be able to feel some kind of natural ebb and flow with the rhythmic part of the right hand, which is what's happening. The right hand is strumming your chords, and therefore you have rhythms that are used to make the chords sound audible and organized. So, all right, so there you have it. That's the end of this particular chord pair, the A7 to D7. And if you like this video, feel free to like, and if you want to subscribe, you're more than welcome to subscribe. And stay tuned for the next 2 videos, which I'm going to post momentarily, and you'll see them. And also the midweek check-in is coming in also, so I'll be mentioning this video on that video. So have yourself a great one, and we'll talk to you on the next video. See ya.